Welcome back to Vintage HLC Show and Tell. Today we're looking at the Liberty shape, which was designed by Frederick Reed. This was the last shape he made for Homer Laughlin. It was in 1942, and he died in November the same year. The initial treatments were used in the historical America pattern for Woolworths. It was made both in red and in blue. If you want to know more about this particular line, look at video number 18 because I've already discussed this. What I want to talk about today is the decaled version of Liberty, which was rather popular in the late 1940s and early 1950s. So we're just going to look at some of these treatments. We'll start with the platters. This one is Cosmos, which is treatment number L600. So if I go over these treatment numbers, if it starts with an L, the L stands for Liberty. If it starts with a W, it's for Woolworths, because they made a lot of wares exclusively for Woolworths using the Liberty shape. So again, Cosmos, this is treatment L600. Ivy border with gold trim. Mums, I believe that this is treatment L602. There's no trim on it. This originates on the coronet shape. I can't verify that it's L602, but I do believe that it is. Spring wreath, we see this on a lot of different Homer Laughlin shapes. It made its way onto Liberty. Look at the back stamp. This comes from 1948. All Liberty will be marked with this particular back stamp with a date code, unless there's also a gold stamp. We'll get to a couple of those in a moment. This was a factory second, and I don't know if that's going to show up, but you can see all these little black specks in the glaze. So instead of using this with a line of dinnerware, they put on this gold garland border, which is a gold stamp, and this little floral decal in the center. And this one comes from 1952. This Liberty platter looks like an underglaze print, but they're actually decals. They're made to look like an underglaze print. And Colonial Kitchen. This one is L608 with gold trim. This was used on a lot of different shapes, swing eggshell, Virginia rose. Not too uncommon on Liberty. It's from 1951. So we'll put these aside. There's our ivy border again on a rim soup. This stylized poppy decal with an ivory shoulder. This one is W146. 9-inch plate. This decal you're more than likely going to find on Cavalier eggshell rather than Liberty, but here it is on Liberty with this maroon border. On Cavalier, I believe it's called Canterbury. Dogwood. This is treatment L613. A lot of different parties carried this line. When G.C. Murphy carried it, they called it Dogwood. When Alden's called it, they called it Apple Blossom. But it's always going to be L613, no matter who carried it or what they called it. I think Richard Ratcheter in his Virginia Rose book says that it's a tulip magnolia. Colonial couple with some gold stamps, possibly done by an outside decorator. Homer Laughlin, I don't think, ever officially used this particular decal, though I'm not 100% sure on that. It doesn't have a secondary marking on it like we would expect. This one comes from 1950. This one is L644, or stylized grapes and green border. This was also on Cavalier. I believe it was CV1, which would have made it the first treatment on Cavalier eggshell. This one has its treatment number written on gold on the back. Little unusual. You would ordinarily see that treatment number on casserole lids or the nappies or bakers. This one comes from 1951. Calla Rose. We see this decal on a lot of Homer Laughlin wares, particularly the eggshell lines. Has gold trim on this piece. Made for Cunningham and Pickett. We'll get to Cunningham and Pickett in a later video because there's quite a few different patterns to look at. But this one's Calla Rose, Cunningham and Pickett, Alliance, Ohio. From, I believe that's 1952. It's kind of faded. Queen Esther, grocery store premium. This has an unusual treatment number. I think it's SS28. I think that SS stands for like sales stimulators. But this was carried by a lot of grocery stores, IGA being the main one. We have these gold stamps around the border, or on the rim. That center decal you can find on Theme Eggshell, Georgian Eggshell, a couple other lines. So there's your Homer Laughlin marking. And we see a special overglazed gold stamp, Queen Esther, warranted 22 karat gold. You'll find a lot of Liberty pieces with this particular chain gold stamp design. This one has a floral decal in the center. These two plates, a lot of potteries use these horse riding decals. This one says halt, this one says road riding. Again, we see the Liberty chain gold stamp. Joanne Jasper recently gave me a decal sheet with some of these unused decals on them. So you see, oh, it's in reverse. See that it's leaping, trot, halt, and road riding. And there's the smaller versions that would have been used on cups and saucers and creamers and sugars, and of course the large versions on plates and platters. This was done by, let's see, let me make that out, Amalgamated Lithographers of America, New York. So very uncommon to find an uncut sheet of decals from any time period. Meadow Goldenrod. We see this decal treatment on a lot of different Homer Laughlin shapes. Originates on Yellowstone as Y137. It was used on Virginia Rose. It was used on Century Ravenna. Here on Liberty with gold trim, it's L630. This one is treatment W442. Comes from 1946. The White Rose with platinum trim. This is treatment L633. If it had gold instead of the platinum, it would be L634. You can also find this rose decal with gold stamp border. Lattice Rose, another Woolworth treatment. I'm sorry, it's W349. This is L612. You can also find these decals on Cavalier Eggshell. Another Woolworth treatment, W246. Looks like it's hand painted, but those are actually decals to make it look like it was hand painted on there. Covered casserole. The casserole and the teapot were added in 1943. They were a little bit later. This is a treatment I've never found on any other Homer Laughlin shape. I've seen it on the platter, the sauce boat, and this casserole from Liberty. It's rather unusual spiral-like treatment. No treatment number in the lid, unfortunately. Let's see if it's dated. 1945. We see some teapots. This one has decals that you'll normally find on Kitchen Craft from the 1950s. There's our W442 again. We see the Priscilla decals on Liberty. Not terribly uncommon, but you'll probably find Priscilla on Republic and Eggshell Nautilus more often, even Modern Farmers. I think it's MF2. On Liberty, it is L654. There's our Dogwood again. Gold stamp. I think it's Golden Rose when it's on Virginia Rose. Here it is on Liberty. Orioles decal with gold stamp. Let's get a better look at that. You'll also find this on Rhythm dinnerware. This one's dated 1950. Currier and Ives decals with the blue band. I think it's called Blue Heaven, unless it has gold stamps, and then it's called something else. I can't remember, Sun Glow maybe, or something like that. But here it's Blue Heaven. Amsterdam decal with gold stamp. And this one has a decal that was originally meant for Piccadilly. You don't see too many Piccadilly treatments make their way onto other shapes, but here it is on Liberty. It was also used on Cavalier Eggshell. This is L621. So that's going to be it for Liberty. Again, Frederick Reed's last shape for Homer Laughlin, made in the 1940s and 1950s.